Elias Grant walked alone through the broken ruins of the moon's surface. His ship had fallen from the sky like a wounded bird, torn apart by an unseen storm. Now dust floated in the thin air and silence covered everything. His helmet light cut through the fog, showing shattered metal, broken domes, and burned machines. He could hear only his own breathing. There was no life here, or so he thought. He moved carefully between collapsed towers, his scanner sweeping for any sign of movement. It was supposed to be an empty moon, a forgotten colony, but something felt wrong. His instincts, the same that had saved him in war and deep space storms, whispered that he was not alone. Then he heard it. A sound. Soft, weak, trembling. It wasn't through his ears. It was inside his mind, a voice small and frightened, echoing faintly like a memory. "Help, please." Elias froze. He looked around confused, then turned toward the source. A half-buried escape pod cracked open like an egg. The signal grew stronger as he stepped closer. "Human, help my mother." He dropped his scanner and ran. The pod's hatch was twisted, metal bent inward. Inside, lying among shattered crystals and leaking light, was a small alien child. Her skin shimmered faintly like glass touched by moonlight. Her big violet eyes stared at him with fear and hope. She tried to move but winced in pain. "Easy," Elias said softly, kneeling beside her. He could see she wasn't dangerous, just hurt and scared. He checked his translator, but her voice wasn't coming through the air. It was coming directly into his thoughts. Somehow she was speaking through the mind. "My name's Elias," he said. "You're safe now." She blinked, then whispered in his mind again. "Mother, please, save her." Elias looked deeper into the wreckage. The pod had been part of something bigger, maybe a royal vessel. There were markings on the side, not military but ceremonial, almost beautiful. He climbed over the debris, his light flickering. A few meters away, under a fallen beam, he saw another figure. Tall, elegant, motionless. It was the mother. She was badly injured. Her armor was cracked, her breathing faint. Yet even in pain, her presence was powerful. She opened her eyes as Elias approached, and for a moment he felt a wave of emotion. Not words, but pure feeling. Sadness, fear, and love for the child. "You, human?" Her voice echoed weakly in his thoughts. "Why are you here?" Elias didn't answer with logic. He knelt beside her, used his emergency tools, and began lifting the beam. The weight strained his arms, the metal burning his gloves, but he didn't stop until it was free. He injected a stabilizer from his med kit into her arm. "You're hurt. Let me help." She looked at him, puzzled. "You help enemy?" "I don't see an enemy," he said quietly. "I see someone who needs help." Her eyes softened. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not from another species, and not from one known as human. They were rumored to be wild, unpredictable, ruled by emotion. Yet here he was, risking himself for her and her child. The child crawled closer, her small hands trembling as she touched her mother's face. "Mother, he came for us." Lorene, the queen of the Valari, felt her heart twist. She reached out, touching the human's hand weakly. "Thank you," she said, the words forming clumsily through his translator. "I did not believe your kind knew mercy." Elias gave a faint smile. "We surprise people sometimes." He carried the child in his arms while supporting the queen with his shoulder. Together they made their way out of the wreck, step by slow step through the dust and wind. Behind them the wreckage crackled with sparks. In front of them lay only ruins and silence. But Elias had already decided. He wouldn't leave them. Not here. Not to die alone. As they reached a small shelter built into the rocks, the storm thickened. Lightning flashed in the distance, painting the gray landscape in blue and white. Elias secured the door and turned on his emergency generator. The faint hum filled the silence. The child sat near the heater, her eyes reflecting the small flames. Elias removed his helmet and offered her a water pack. She hesitated, then accepted it, watching him with curiosity. "You are strange," she said softly through his translator. "You have no light in your eyes, but you are kind." Elias chuckled quietly. "Where I'm from, kindness doesn't need light." She tilted her head, trying to understand. "You will help my mother?" He nodded. "I'll do everything I can." The queen stirred, weak but awake. Her voice touched both their minds. "Human. My people gone?" Elias looked down. He didn't want to lie. I didn't see anyone else. Her eyes closed for a long moment. Then it is just us. Elias didn't know what to say. He looked at the small girl who was trying not to cry. Something inside him hardened. That same feeling he used to have when protecting his crew, his family. Then we'll make it through, he said firmly. All three of us. The storm raged outside, but inside that small shelter, something rare was happening. Trust between two beings from different worlds. The child leaned against him, exhausted, her soft breathing mixing with the hum of the generator. The queen watched through half-open eyes, her mind whispering to herself words she never thought she'd think. A human protected us. You talk even when alone, she said in her clear, gentle voice that spoke through his mind. He laughed lightly. Old habit. Helps me think. She tilted her head. Humans are strange, but kind. Elias opened the ration pack, examined it, then gave it to her. Eat first. Your mother needs strength too. We'll share later. Lorene, the queen, stirred slightly. Her glowing eyes opened, dim but calm. She had rested for hours, and though her wounds had stopped bleeding, her body was still weak. When she looked at Elias, she saw him not as a soldier or stranger now, but as something different. He had carried her through danger, saved her child, and asked for nothing. You stayed, she said softly, her voice barely reaching his ears. Elias turned toward her and nodded. Of course. You'd do the same for me. She blinked slowly. Humans always think that way. Not all, he admitted. But some of us try. He helped her sit up, giving her water and the food Mira hadn't finished. The queen took it slowly, studying him between each breath. You fix machines, she said, noticing the tools beside him. You are not soldier? Engineer, Elias said. I fix things that fall apart. Ships, stations, sometimes people. Mira giggled softly at his words. The sound made him smile. It was the first real laugh he had heard since the crash. Lorene watched her daughter carefully. Mira's joy, small as it was, brought strength to her. For the first time since the fall of her people, she saw light again. Not from her world's crystals, but from a human's warmth. Later that day, Elias began repairing the old shelter systems. The power cells were nearly dead, and the air filters barely worked. He spent hours bent over circuits, patching cables with bits of human and alien tech. Lorene watched from a corner, amazed. He worked with quiet focus, his hands moving like someone used to rebuilding hope from nothing. You do this alone? She asked. He wiped the sweat from his face and looked back. Most of the time, yeah. It's easier not to depend on anyone when you've lost too many. Her eyes softened. You lost family. He didn't answer for a while. The silence was heavy, broken only by the hum of his tools. Then he said quietly, a wife and a daughter. Long time ago. Colony attack. I couldn't save them. Lorene lowered her head. I am sorry, Elias Grant. He gave a small, tired smile. Don't be. You just focus on healing. We've both lost enough already. Hours passed. As the light dimmed again, the air inside grew warm. Mira played near the corner, drawing shapes with a broken stylus on the dusty floor. She drew her mother, herself, and then Elias beside them. 3 figures under a small light. Lorene saw the drawing and smiled faintly. What are you making, my child? A family, Mira said proudly. He is my father now. He saved us. Elias froze for a moment, surprised. Mira, But the child smiled brightly. You care for us. That's what fathers do. Lorene looked at Elias, then at her daughter. Something gentle moved inside her heart. She speaks truth, she said softly. You have done what even our own warriors would not. Elias shook his head. I just did what anyone should. Not anyone, Lorene said. Only someone with a heart that remembers love. That night, as they sat together near the small heater, Lorene began to speak of her world. The Valari kingdom, built on crystal mountains and oceans that glowed in the dark. She told him of their power, their pride, and their fall. The mercenaries had come to claim their technology, and when she refused, they destroyed her home. Only a few ships had escaped. Hers was one. And even that was hunted. Elias listened silently. Every word carried pain, but also pride. So your people are gone? He asked softly. Scattered, she said. Some may live, but I cannot reach them. Then maybe we can, Elias said firmly. There's still a beacon core in the wreck. If I fix it, maybe someone will hear you. Lorene studied him carefully. He had no reason to help more. No reward, no promise. Yet he looked at her as if her people's hope mattered to him. You risk your life for strangers, she said. Why? He smiled gently. Because I've been a stranger once too. For a long time she said nothing. Then she lowered her eyes and whispered, You are not a stranger now. Outside the wind rose again, carrying faint echoes across the empty plain. Inside the shelter the three of them sat close to the fading firelight. The human, the queen, and her daughter, all from different worlds yet bound by something that no war could destroy. As Elias checked the systems one last time, he looked at them both and said, Tomorrow I'll go back to the wreck. We'll need supplies from that beacon. If anyone's out there, we'll call for help. Lorene nodded slowly. We will wait for your return, Elias Grant. Mira yawned and leaned against his arm. Promise you come back? Elias smiled, placing a hand on her small shoulder. I promise, kiddo. I always come back. When they finally slept, the soft hum of machines surrounded them. For the first time in years, Elias felt peace. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But deep inside, he already knew one thing. He wasn't alone anymore. Morning came slowly, the pale light of the twin suns rising over the broken horizon. Elias woke first. The air inside the shelter was cold and dry, the heater flickering from low power. He stretched his sore arms and looked toward the corner where Lorene and Mira still slept. The sight made him pause for a moment. The queen's breathing was calmer now, her silver skin glowing softly under the weak light. Mira slept curled against her mother's side, her small hand resting on Lorene's arm. Elias quietly picked up his tool bag and checked the portable oxygen unit. He knew what he had to do. The wreck was still half a kilometer away, and if he didn't return with more power cells, their systems would fail. Before leaving, he wrote a small message on a metal plate with his engraving pen. Back soon. Stay safe. Then he looked one more time at the two sleeping figures before stepping into the cold, dusty wind. The path back to the wreck was rough and quiet. Elias moved through fields of shattered crystal and burnt alloy, each step reminding him how fragile life could be in space. His visor displayed faint signals, maybe leftover energy signatures from the Volari ship. He followed them carefully, scanning for movement. The mercenaries might still be near. When he reached the crash site, he stood still for a long moment. The ship looked worse than before, twisted, blackened, and silent. But inside, there was still hope. He began working immediately, cutting through the hull to reach the central power chamber. Sparks flew as his cutter sliced metal and the stale air filled with dust. Come on, he whispered, pulling at a heavy panel. Just give me one working cell. After an hour of searching, he found what he needed. 2 half-functional energy cores, cracked but stable. He carefully placed them into his pack. As he turned to leave, his scanner flashed a warning. Movement. Not far. He ducked behind a broken wall and peered through a gap. A small drone floated through the ruins, scanning with a red beam. It wasn't Volari design. That meant the mercenaries had returned. His heart pounded. He stayed silent until the drone drifted away, then slipped out through the shadows, moving as quietly as he could. By the time he returned to the shelter, the suns were lower in the sky. When the door slid open, Mira ran toward him, eyes bright with relief. You came back, she said, her voice soft but filled with joy. Elias smiled tiredly. Told you I would. He set the power cells down and began connecting them to the generator. The soft hum of energy filled the air again, stronger than before. Lorene watched from her resting place. Her eyes followed every motion he made, studying the human's focus and care. You risked your life for us again, she said quietly. The scanners of our enemies still sweep this moon. I felt them in my dreams. Elias nodded. Yeah, I saw one of their drones near the wreck. They'll probably come back. Mira's smile faded. They will find us? Not if I can help it, Elias said. We'll move soon. But first I'm fixing the beacon. If anyone's listening, maybe your people will come. He worked through the evening. Wires, crystals, and circuits lay scattered across the floor. The beacon core was old and cracked, but the structure reminded him of human designs, energy guided through light instead of metal. He connected his power cell to the beacon and switched it on. The device glowed faintly, sending a soft pulse into the sky. Signal strength. Weak but steady, he said. It's working. Lorene rose slowly from her resting place. She walked to him with careful steps, still weak but stronger than before. You amaze me, Elias Grant, she said softly. Your people are not known to the stars, yet you do what even kings fail to do. He smiled a little. Maybe we just have too much hope for our own good. Her gaze lingered on him, thoughtful. Hope, she repeated. That is what I lost when my world burned. You brought it back. Mira joined them, holding Elias's hand with her small fingers. We are a family now, she said happily. Lorene smiled faintly but didn't correct her. The word family echoed in her heart like a warm memory of something she had once dreamed about. Night returned quickly. Outside, faint lightning danced across the far side of the plain. Inside, the beacon pulsed every few seconds like a heartbeat in the dark. Elias sat near the generator watching the readings. Lorene sat beside him, silent for a while. She finally spoke, her voice quiet. Elias, if the signal reaches my people, they will come for me. You may not be safe when they do. He looked at her calmly. I'll take my chances. I didn't do this for safety. She studied his face, seeing no fear there. Then why? He looked down for a moment, then said softly, because someone once did the same for me. When I was young, my station was attacked. A stranger pulled me from the fire. I never learned his name. He just said, pass it on. So that's what I try to do. Lorene's eyes glowed faintly with emotion. Perhaps that man was not human alone, she said. Perhaps he was something greater. Elias chuckled quietly. Maybe. But he'd probably laugh if you told him that. A small sound broke their quiet talk. The beacon's pulse changed tone. Elias checked the monitor quickly. Signal boost. Someone's responding, Mira gasped. Our people? Maybe, Elias said, watching the numbers climb. Or someone else. Lorene closed her eyes and focused, her telepathic senses reaching outward. After a long moment, she whispered, I feel them. My people. Faint, far, but alive. Elias smiled. Then we're not done yet. Tomorrow we send a stronger signal. And maybe, a sudden rumble shook the shelter. Dust fell from the ceiling. The beacon flickered. Elias grabbed Mira and pulled her close. What was that? Lorene's expression hardened. Not the storm. They found us. Outside, faint red lights moved across the distant hills. Ships closing in. Elias looked at them through the small window, and then turned to Lorene. Then we'll make sure they regret it. He turned away from the window and checked the power generator. The signal was still running, but they couldn't stay here much longer. The hum of the beacon might lead the mercenaries straight to their door. Lorene sat nearby, her expression calm but eyes sharp. They are near, she said softly, her telepathic voice reaching both Elias and Mira. I can feel their thoughts, cold, focused. They hunt us, Elias nodded. Then we need to be ready. He began moving quickly, gathering his tools and the small crate of spare parts. Mira watched him with wide eyes. Are we leaving again? She asked, clutching her small blanket. Not yet, Elias said gently. We'll wait until they're closer, then move through the canyon. They won't expect us to go underground. Lorene rose slowly, still weak but standing with quiet dignity. You know this land better than I, Elias Grant. What do you plan? Elias pointed at the old mining tunnel map displayed on his wrist device. These tunnels run under the whole ridge. If we can reach the main shaft, there's an old transport line that leads miles east. It's a chance. Chance is enough, Lorene said firmly. He smiled faintly. That's the spirit. The distant roar of engines grew louder. Dust fell from the ceiling as a shockwave shook the ground. The mercenaries were landing nearby. Elias turned off the beacon, dimmed all lights, and motioned for silence. The three of them crouched near the back of the shelter. Mira's small hand slipped into his gloved one. Through the cracked wall, Elias saw faint red beams sweep the area. The mercenaries' scanners were close. He whispered, They're searching for power trails. The beacon signal residue might give us a few minutes, but not more. Lorene closed her eyes and focused. I can confuse their minds for a short time, she said. They will sense echoes, ghosts where we are not. Elias looked at her in surprise. You can do that? She nodded slowly. It will drain me, but yes. My people's minds were once our strongest shield. He touched her arm gently. Then I'll handle the rest. Outside, a faint humming noise grew as search drones flew past the broken rocks. Elias took out a small box from his toolkit. It looked like a cluster of tiny metal spheres linked by wires. He placed it on the floor near the wall and whispered, Old human trick sound decoy. He tapped the control, and the spheres rolled out silently, spreading small heat signatures across the nearby field. Within moments, the scanners outside turned toward the false readings. The mercenaries' voices, distorted through their helmets, echoed faintly as they followed the wrong trail. Lorene's mental pressure pushed outward, scattering their sense of direction even further. "Go," she said weakly. "Now." Elias lifted Mira into his arms and helped Lorene walk. They slipped out through the back passage, climbing down into the narrow tunnel behind the shelter. The metal stairs creaked softly under their weight. Below them, the old mining tunnel stretched into darkness. The air smelled of rust and cold dust. Elias turned on his wrist light. "Careful. Stay close to me." They moved quietly, step by step. Above, faint explosions echo. Ed, frustrated mercenaries firing at shadows. Mira looked up, whispering, "They think we're still there." "That's the idea," Elias said with a small grin. As they walked deeper, the sound of machinery grew faint. The tunnel opened into a wide chamber filled with old mining carts and broken rails. Elias placed Mira down and looked around. "If I can power one of these carts," he said, "we can reach the eastern ridge before dawn." Lorene leaned against a wall, catching her breath. Her energy was fading fast from the mind projection. "Do it," she said softly. "I will rest." Elias worked quickly, pulling cables and rerouting old wires. He used his own power cell to jumpstart the engine. The machine coughed, then hummed faintly. Mira clapped her hands softly. "It works." Elias smiled, tired but proud. "Barely. But it'll do." They climbed into the cart. The engine buzzed louder as it rolled forward, metal wheels screeching against rusty rails. Darkness rushed past on both sides. The wind from the tunnel brushed their faces. For a short while it felt like freedom, but it didn't last. The rail ahead glowed red, heat signatures from the mercenaries' drones. "They've found the tunnels," Elias muttered. "Hold on!" He pressed a button on his control pad, rerouting the power to the rear coils. The cart sped up, sparks flying behind them. Mira laughed despite the danger clinging to his arm. "Faster!" she shouted. Elias grinned, then glanced at Lorene. "You all right?" She nodded faintly. "Do not worry for me, human. Just keep us alive," he chuckled. "That's the plan." The tunnel split ahead. Elias steered the cart sharply left, sparks flying as they scraped against the walls. Behind them, the sound of metal and drones grew distant. Finally, after what felt like hours, they burst out into open air. The second sun was rising, painting the cliffs gold. They stopped the cart near a high ridge. Below them stretched a vast canyon filled with fog and light. Elias helped Lorene down, and she stood there silently, her eyes on the glowing sky. "We live again," she whispered. Mira ran to her mother, smiling. "We escaped!" Elias looked back toward the horizon. The wrecked moon shimmered under the morning light, and far in the distance red flashes still marked where the mercenaries searched the ruins. But they were safe for now. Lorene turned to him, her voice calm. "You risked everything again, Elias Grant. Why?" He looked at her and smiled gently. "Because that's what family does." She held his gaze for a long moment, and something unspoken passed between them. Trust, warmth, and quiet gratitude. He smiled slightly. "Just thinking. We can't stay here long. The drones might sweep this way again by nightfall. Then we move," she said simply. Mira tugged at Elias's sleeve. "Where will we go?" He knelt beside her and pointed toward the east, where faint blue lights flickered between distant cliffs. "There's a communication outpost that way. Maybe old, maybe working. If we can reach it, I can boost the beacon signal and call for help." Mira nodded bravely, her small hand finding his. "Then we go together." They began walking along the canyon's edge. The air was thin and dry, and the rocks cracked underfoot. Lorene moved slowly but steadily, her steps sure even on the uneven ground. She kept glancing at Elias, this human who never gave up, who kept finding ways to survive where others would fall. His spirit puzzled her. Humans, she realized, had no special powers, no telepathy or wings or glowing skin. Yet their strength came from something deeper. Hours passed as they made their way down into the canyon. The cliffs rose like giant walls of bronze, and the light faded into orange. Elias found a small cave near the base where they could rest. He lit a tiny flare and checked his gear. "We'll stay here tonight," he said. "I'll fix the transmitter while you two rest." Lorene sat beside him while Mira slept curled up under his jacket. You work without rest, she said softly. You could stop. You have done enough for us. Elias didn't look up. Not until you're safe. Safe, she repeated quietly. I had forgotten what that word feels like. He smiled faintly. You'll remember it soon enough. She watched him solder wires and adjust small components, his fingers steady despite the cold. Why do you help us, Elias Grant? She asked after a long pause. There is nothing for you to gain. He looked at her for a moment, then back to his work. When my family was alive, I used to tell my daughter that being human meant never walking away when someone needs you. Maybe I'm just trying to keep that promise. Lorene's expression softened. Your daughter, she must have loved you greatly. He stopped for a moment, his eyes distant. I hope she did. She was about Mira's age when the station fell. The silence that followed was gentle, filled only with the soft hum of the tools. Lorene reached out and placed her hand lightly on his arm. You honor her every time you choose kindness, she said. Elias nodded, his voice low. Maybe that's all any of us can do. By dawn, the transmitter was ready. It was a small, fragile device built from human and Valari parts, patched together with hope. Elias activated it, and a clear pulse of light shot into the morning sky. The sound of its signal echoed faintly through the canyon, a heartbeat of survival. Mira stirred and blinked awake. Did it work? She asked sleepily. Elias smiled. We'll find out soon. For a few hours, nothing happened. Then Lorene's eyes widened. She stood suddenly, her gaze fixed on the horizon. I feel them, she whispered. My people. They heard the call. Elias stood too. They're coming? Yes, she said. They are far, but they come. We are not alone anymore. Before relief could settle in, the ground trembled with a deep rumble. Elias's scanner flashed red. Multiple signals, fast closing in. Not your people, he said quickly. The mercenaries. Lorene's face grew tense. They followed the same signal. Elias shut off the transmitter and looked around. There's no time to run. We'll have to hold until your people arrive. Mira clutched his hand tightly. You promised we'd be safe. He squeezed her hand gently. And I meant it. You trust me? She nodded, though her eyes were frightened. Elias moved to the cave entrance and began stacking loose rocks into a barrier. He handed Lorene his spare blaster, an old mining tool that could fire bursts of light strong enough to blind sensors. If they find us, use this to scare them off. I'll draw them away. Lorene shook her head firmly. No, Elias Grant, we stay together. He looked at her, ready to argue, but her gaze was steady, unshakable. He nodded finally. Together, then. The air outside filled with the low hum of engines. Red lights swept over the cliffs. Elias felt his heart pound, but he forced himself to stay calm. He checked the small shield generator he had rebuilt from spare parts and activated it. A faint blue shimmer surrounded the cave. Weak, but it might buy them minutes. Lorene stood beside him, her energy focused. Her mind reached outward, clouding the enemy's senses, confusing their scanners. Mira stayed close behind, clutching her small pendant. As the first search drone appeared near the canyon mouth, Elias whispered, "Hold on." Just a little longer, then, in the distance, another light appeared, golden, brighter than the red ones. Lorene's eyes widened in recognition. That light, it's ours. My people are near. Elias exhaled in relief, a tired smile crossing his face. Good timing. Moments later, a deep, clear tone echoed across the canyon, the sound of Valari rescue ships descending. The red lights of the mercenaries scattered as the golden ships approached. The cave filled with warm light, and for the first time since the crash, hope filled the air. Lorene turned to Elias, her voice trembling. You did it, human. You saved us again. He smiled softly, his eyes reflecting the golden glow. No, he said. We saved each other. We feared you lost. Lorene nodded softly. I was close to being lost, she said, her voice calm but full of feeling. But a human found me, and saved both me and my daughter. The soldiers looked at Elias with surprise. A few whispered among themselves, confused. Humans were not well known among the Valari. They were spoken of as reckless wanderers from a forgotten world. None had ever seen one in person before. Elias gave a small nod, trying not to feel out of place. Glad to see you made it, he said to Lorene. You and Mira are safe now. That's what matters. But before he could step away, Mira clung to him tighter. You're coming with us, right? She asked, her small eyes wide and pleading. He hesitated, unsure what to say. He looked at Lorene, then back at the child. I don't think I belong on one of your ships, Mira. I'm just— You are my father, she said quickly, her voice trembling. You saved me. The Valari soldiers exchanged surprised glances, uncertain how to react. Lorene placed a gentle hand on her daughter's shoulder. Mira, she said softly, he has his own world. But Mira shook her head. His world can be ours too. Elias knelt down, meeting her gaze. Hey, listen, he said gently. You'll be safe now. That's all I ever wanted, but your people might not have room for a stubborn old human like me. Lorene looked at him quietly, her eyes unreadable. Then she spoke, her tone firm. There is room. You risked your life for my child and for me. Among the Valari, such courage is not forgotten. Before Elias could reply, one of the officers stepped forward. My queen, the mercenaries are retreating. Their ships fled when they detected our fleet. We should leave this moon before they return. Lorene nodded. Prepare the wounded bay. This human comes with us. Elias blinked. Wait, That is an order, she said gently, but her eyes carried the warmth of gratitude rather than command. Within minutes, they were aboard the largest ship. The interior shimmered with light and sound, walls that pulsed softly like living crystal. The air was warm, carrying the faint scent of ozone and something sweet, almost like flowers. Elias sat near a viewing panel, still feeling out of place among the elegant alien crew. Lorene rested nearby, recovering strength, while Mira leaned against his arm, smiling brightly. Now you can see the stars with us, she said. He smiled faintly. Guess I can. As the ship lifted off, the canyon below disappeared into a swirl of dust. The moon became a distant dot and space opened wide around them. Elias stared at the stars. The same stars he had seen 1,000 times from Earth, yet somehow they looked different now. Maybe because for the first time in years he didn't feel alone. Hours passed as the ship traveled toward the Valari sanctuary world. During that time, Lorene spoke softly with her officers, issuing orders and giving thanks to those who had searched for her. But her eyes returned to Elias often. She saw him sitting quietly, staring out at the stars with thoughtful eyes. Something about his silence spoke louder than words, a strength born from loss shaped by compassion. Later, when the ship entered a calm drift through a nebula, she approached him. Elias Grant, she said softly, you are quiet again. He smiled a little, just thinking about how strange life can be. One day I'm fixing machines on a forgotten station. Next thing I know, I'm flying through space with a queen and her daughter. Lorene smiled faintly. You make it sound simple. Maybe it is, he said. Helping someone, that's the only simple thing left in this galaxy. She sat beside him, her voice softer now. You think with your heart more than your mind. That is rare among humans and even rarer among my kind. He chuckled quietly. Guess that's what got me into this mess. She tilted her head, her eyes shining gently. A mess that saved 2 lives and maybe more. My people will remember what you did, Elias. He looked at her, his tone calm. You don't owe me anything, Lorene. Her expression grew serious. You are wrong. I owe you everything. Before he could respond, Mira appeared between them, holding a small glowing crystal. Mother says this light is a sign of our bond, she said proudly. I want you to have it, Father. Elias took the crystal carefully, its warmth glowing through his glove. Thank you, Mira, he said softly. I'll keep it close. Lorene watched them both, her heart heavy with feelings she could not easily name. Gratitude, admiration, and something more. The human had become part of their lives in a way she hadn't expected. As the ship neared their homeworld, the view outside the window changed, a beautiful planet of silver seas and crystal forests. Elias stared in quiet wonder. It's beautiful, he whispered. Lorene smiled faintly. It was once called the Heart of Light. Now, perhaps it will shine again, because of a human who refused to let us die. He looked at her with a small, humble smile. Guess I was just in the right place at the Ramira pressed her face against the window beside him, her small eyes wide with joy. That's my home, she said proudly. Isn't it beautiful, Father? Elias smiled softly, though the word father still felt strange to hear. It's the most beautiful place I've ever seen, he said. And he meant it. Lorene walked toward them, her long robe flowing like silver water. The strength had returned to her voice, but there was still softness in her tone. "Welcome to Valara," she said quietly, "the heart of what remains of my people." As the ship landed on a crystal platform surrounded by light, a group of Valari nobles and guardians waited to receive their queen. They bowed deeply as she stepped down, but their eyes widened when they saw Elias walking behind her carrying Mira in his arms. Murmurs spread among them, questions whispered in voices too low for him to understand. A human among the royal family was unheard of. Lorene ignored their murmurs and spoke clearly. "This man, Elias Grant, saved my life and my daughter's. His courage and heart brought us home when hope was lost." The guards lowered their heads respectfully. One of the elders, an older Valari with silver skin faded to white, stepped forward. "Then he will be honored among us," he said solemnly. "No matter what world he comes from." Elias bowed slightly, feeling awkward under their glowing gazes. "You don't have to honor me," he said quietly. "Just knowing you both made it home is enough." Lorene looked at him with gentle eyes. "You still do not understand, human. You did not only save us, you changed how my people see your kind." She led him through the shining halls of the palace. Every wall sparkled like frozen light, and soft music hummed through the air as if the building itself was alive. Mira ran ahead laughing, her steps light and full of joy. Servants and guards watched curiously, but when Lorene smiled, they smiled too. For the first time since the fall of her kingdom, hope returned to Valara. In the great hall, Elias stopped to look at a mural made of living crystal. It showed the stars and the many worlds of the Valari Empire. "You built all this?" he asked softly. Lorene nodded. "Long ago, yes. But we grew proud and forgot humility. Perhaps the galaxy sent you to remind us of it." He smiled faintly. "I'm not much of a teacher. You taught through action," she said simply. Later that evening, as the twin moons rose over the glowing sea, a small celebration began. The survivors of Lorene's fleet gathered to honor their return. Gentle music filled the air and soft lights floated around the gardens like fireflies. Elias sat quietly near the edge, watching the Valari dance in circles that shimmered like waves. Mira ran to him, pulling his hand. "Come dance with me." He laughed softly. "I don't think I know how to dance like your people." "Then dance like a human," she said, her eyes bright. Lorene approached, her expression warm. "Go on, Elias Grant," she said with a small smile. "Even heroes deserve to celebrate." He stood and took Mira's hand, moving clumsily but with joy. The crowd watched and smiled. Even Lorene laughed quietly, something rare and precious. For the first time in a long while, the air was filled not with fear but with laughter. When the music ended, Lorene walked beside him through the garden. The night breeze was cool and the sea below shimmered like liquid glass. For a while they said nothing, just walked side by side. Then Lorene spoke softly. "Tomorrow I must stand before the council. They will ask about our journey, about the human who saved us, and they will ask what I plan to do next." Elias looked at her. "And what will you tell them?" She stopped walking and turned to face him. The moonlight touched her silver skin, making her glow like starlight. "I will tell them the truth, that the Valari Queen lives because of a human's heart, and that this man who had no reason to help us became the reason our people survived." He shook his head slightly. "Lorene, I didn't do it for honor or thanks. I just couldn't walk away." She smiled faintly. "That is why you deserve both." Tea glow in the dark. Lorene laughed softly, a sound like music. "Then it is decided. From this day you are not just a visitor, you are family." As the stars shimmered above them, Mira came running, carrying the glowing crystal she had given him before. She held it between them, the light reflecting in their eyes. "Now we are together," she said happily. "A real family." Elias knelt and hugged her tightly. "Yes," he said quietly. "A real family." Lorene watched them with a warm smile. In that moment, the galaxy seemed smaller, the distance between species and worlds forgotten. The human who had once been lost had found a home among stars, and the queen who had once lost everything had found something greater than a kingdom, a bond that no war could break. As the night deepened and the sea shimmered with light, the story of Elias Grant, the human who became part of a royal Valari family, spread quietly across the stars, and somewhere far beyond, other worlds began to whisper the same simple truth, that sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change the fate of an entire galaxy.